Someone submitted a question that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She wanted to remain anonymous, so for this episode, we're going to call her Trish. Here's what Trish said. Why do I always put myself out there to keep everyone else happy? I'll do things I don't want to do because it just feels easier than dealing with someone being upset or disappointed with me. And Trish, if you're watching, I think there is probably a lot of women listening right now who know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you say yes when you really want to say no. Maybe you're exhausted, but you get up and do it anyways. Maybe your partner leaves something sitting there for the 10th time and you just pick it up because asking them to do it just feels like way more work. Maybe you rehearse something in your head for an hour but decide not to even bring it up at all. Maybe you reread a text like 3 times just to make sure it doesn't sound off. Maybe something is really bothering you, but you don't bring it up because you already know how it's going to go and it's just going to create tension. You say you're fine when it's really not. You might even agree to affection or sex when you don't genuinely even want it, because saying no and dealing with your partner's disappointment feels harder in that moment. And when you look at all those situations together, there's something interesting happening. You're uncomfortable either way. Because if you say no, someone else might be disappointed, frustrated, and upset with you. But if you say yes, you're the one who's uncomfortable. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you do this little mental math in your head. Which discomfort is going to be the easiest for me to deal with? And somehow, your own discomfort feels more manageable than theirs because you've learned how to swallow your feelings. You know how to tell yourself, you know what, it's fine. You know how to push through it. What feels harder is sitting across from somebody who is disappointed in you, angry, annoyed, or just giving you the silent treatment altogether. So somewhere in your head, the calculation gets made. I'll take the discomfort. And sometimes it happens so quickly that you don't even realize you've made the choice. But maybe the bigger question underneath Trish's question is this. When did someone else's discomfort become something you believe you're responsible for preventing, even at your own expense? So that's what I want to make sense of here today. So welcome to Let's Make Sense of It. If you're new here, I'm Tina. I don't have all the answers, and I'm definitely not here to diagnose anyone or tell you that there's one explanation that fits every situation, because there's not. What I want to do with these episodes is simple. I want to help you look at different possibilities, because understanding what might be happening can help you to stop automatically assuming that you're the problem. And today, that means looking at something you might be doing yourself. When you hear the word people-pleasing, you might just picture someone who desperately wants everyone to like them. But sometimes it's much more complicated than that. It can be, I don't want people to be upset with me, or I don't want to deal with what happens if I say no. You might actually be very independent. You might speak your mind in lots of areas in your life. And then there's that one relationship and that one type of reaction that makes you start adjusting yourself. Someone asks you for something, and before you even figure out what you want, You're already thinking about how they'll feel if you say no. Because someone's mood changes and you immediately wonder, did I do something wrong? Someone seems disappointed and suddenly you're examining yourself, reassuring them, trying to make it better. So maybe this isn't always about needing someone to be happy. Maybe you've become really uncomfortable with allowing someone to be unhappy with you. So where does it come from? There isn't one answer. Your history and your experience are your own. But there are some possibilities worth looking at. And for you, this may have started much earlier than you realize. Just think about it when you were younger and some of the messages your parents told you growing up. You could have been at a party and you're about to leave and you're saying your goodbyes, they're saying their goodbyes, and you don't want to give your uncle a hug, but your mom says, go give your uncle a hug. Don't be rude. So then you just do it anyways. Or you're upset about something and they say, don't make a scene. Just do what you're told. Be nice. If you repeatedly learned growing up that being good meant being agreeable, that saying no makes you difficult, and that keeping the peace gets rewarded, you may start taking in the message without even realizing it. Other people's discomfort is something I should try to prevent. And mine is something I should learn to tolerate. Or for you, it could have started even later than that. Maybe saying what you needed in a relationship turned into an argument. Maybe saying no to your partner led to sulking, anger, withdrawal, or even guilt. Maybe bringing something up created 3 days of tension. And eventually you start to think, it's just easier if I don't say anything at all. And here's the thing, sometimes it is easier in that moment because these behaviors often work. You stay quiet and the argument doesn't happen. You say yes and they're not disappointed. You do it yourself and there's no tension. You apologize and things go back to normal. And your brain gets that immediate relief. See? That worked. And that's exactly why that pattern can be so hard to stop. The price of doing that may not show up till much later, because every time you keep the peace outside of you, you may be creating a little more conflict inside you. And this is something that I had to even learn myself. A few years ago, I was approached about being a co-author in a book called She is Worthy. And honestly, at first, I didn't even think I had a story to tell. But after talking with my editor, she started asking me some questions and pulling things out of me that I hadn't really looked at that way before. And eventually I realized I do have a story. But then something else came up. I was scared to tell it. I remember saying something to my editor like, I want to share my story, but I just don't want to make people upset because I'm sharing my truth. And when I think about it now, it's kind of messed up, really. Because you can be hurt by people, you can be mistreated by them, you can carry the impact of things that have happened to you for years. And somehow you're still worried about protecting everyone else when you finally talk about it. Will this upset them? Will they be angry with me? Should I maybe just leave that part out? Should I make it sound less painful than it actually is to protect them? That's what I was doing. I was editing my own experiences to protect other people's comfort. And my editor noticed that and she reminded me, Tina, this is your story. These are your experiences. And I needed to hear that because even when it came to my own story, I was still worried about how other people might feel hearing it, rather than how it felt for me to have lived it. And around the same time, a therapist gave me an illustration that completely changed the way I looked at what I was doing. He told me to imagine a circle, and the person that you don't want to make uncomfortable is standing in the middle of the circle. Now imagine all these little fireballs coming towards them. Stress, problems, responsibilities, consequences, just life. All the uncomfortable things that every person is going to experience at some point. And then he had me looking at what I was doing. I was running around outside the circle trying to stop as many fireballs as I could before they reached the person in the middle. And maybe you've done this too. Someone has a problem. You try to solve it. They're stressed and you try to make things easier. They're in a bad mood. You start wondering what you can do to change it. They forgot something. You take care of it. They don't want to deal with something. You deal with it. They're disappointed. You try to make it better. They're uncomfortable. You become uncomfortable trying to make them comfortable again. And that's what that circle analogy helped me see. I was running around trying to protect someone I cared about from all these normal parts of life. And while I was doing that, I was getting hit by these fireballs instead. I was carrying the stress. I was taking on all the responsibilities. I was worried about all the problems. I was managing all the emotions. I was exhausting myself trying to make somebody else's life comfortable. And at some point, I had to ask myself this: what happened if I just stop running? The fireballs just don't disappear. They just reach the person they were headed towards in the first place. They get to solve the problem. They get to feel disappointed. They get to manage their stress. They get to work through the uncomfortable feelings. And maybe that's okay. Maybe loving someone doesn't mean you have to run around the circle protecting them from every uncomfortable part of life. And that takes me right back to Trish. Because when you spend enough time watching everybody else's comfort, you can become incredibly good at knowing what everybody around you needs. What makes them happy, what annoys them, what mood they're in, what will keep everything calm. Until someone asks, okay, but what do you want? And you honestly don't even know. There's a cost to this. You can feel taken for granted while also spending years making everything look effortless. And maybe you have to ask for help. Maybe you've asked more than once. Maybe asking felt like another job in itself. Or maybe you've gotten really good at taking care of things that the people around you have come to expect it now. And over time, the resentment can kick in. You start feeling invisible. No wonder why nobody considers what you want. And maybe you have spent so much time adjusting around everyone else that you've lost touch with your own answers. There's another cost too. You can start losing trust in yourself. Every time something inside you says, I don't want this, and you override that, every time something bothers you and you convince yourself it shouldn't, you're teaching yourself to look outside yourself for the answer. Are they okay? Are they upset? Are they disappointed? instead of, hey, am I okay with this? Now imagine doing that for 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years for some people. Eventually, you'll find yourself saying, I don't even know what makes me happy anymore. And when you look at it this way, maybe it makes a little more sense how you got there. But here's the part I really want you to hear. Other people's discomfort is not automatically evidence that you've done something wrong. Someone can be disappointed with your answer, and your answer can still be okay. Someone can be frustrated by your boundary, and you can still need that boundary. Your partner can still want affection or sex, and you can still not want affection or sex. Someone can want your time, and you can still need rest. Someone can disagree with your decision altogether, and it still be the right decision for you. This doesn't mean too bad, deal with it, because you can love people, you can compromise, you can do things simply because they matter to someone you care about. You can change your mind. You can apologize when you get something wrong. But compromise and constantly overriding yourself are two completely different things. So here's a question that might help you tell the difference. You can ask yourself, do I feel like I actually have a choice in this? Can I say yes? Can I say no? Can this person be disappointed without punishing me for it? Can I express a need without spending the next hour convincing them I am not attacking them? Can you disagree and still feel connected? If your choices are constantly being shaped by fear of someone else's reaction, that's worth paying attention to. So what do you do with all of this? You start small. The next time someone asks something of you, notice what happens before the automatic sure. Give yourself a second to say, hey, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Just give me a minute. That little pause gives you the chance to ask yourself, what do I actually want? And when you notice yourself rushing to fix someone else's mood or disappointment, ask yourself, what am I trying to prevent right now? Their anger? Their disappointment? An argument? Being called selfish? Someone pulling away? And then, what would happen if I didn't fix this? And here's one I really want you to sit with. What am I afraid their discomfort will mean about me? Let me repeat that. What am I afraid their discomfort will mean about me? That I'm selfish? Difficult? Uncaring? A bad wife? A bad mom? A bad daughter? A bad friend? Because sometimes it's their reaction you're trying to avoid. And sometimes it's what you've decided their reaction says about you. Because what if they're disappointed? What if they don't love your answer? What if they're annoyed for a little while? What if you don't run around this circle this time? So Trish, here is what I hope you took from this. When you ask, why do I always put myself out there just to keep everyone else happy? I don't think the answer is simply stop being a people pleaser. There may be a reason this became your way of handling things. Maybe it helped you feel safe, accepted, loved, needed. Maybe it kept the peace. Understanding that doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. It gives you a chance to notice when you're doing it and deciding whether you still want to. Because you can care deeply about someone without standing guard over their comfort like it's your job to protect it. And the next time you catch yourself doing the mental math, ask yourself this: why am I working so hard to protect them from a feeling I'm expected myself to tolerate? That's the question I would sit with. And I'd love to hear from you on this one. What's the one thing you've caught yourself doing to keep somebody else comfortable? Tell me in the comments or send me an email at talk@evolvingwithtina.com. I really want to know, because I have a feeling Trish isn't the only one going through this. And if you have something else that has happened in your life that you just want to try to make a little more sense of, maybe something someone keeps doing, a conversation you can't stop replaying, or even something about your own behavior that leaves you wondering, why do I keep doing this? I want to hear about it. You can submit your story anonymously using the form that's in my bio linked Share Your Story, or you can email me directly at talk@evolvingwithtina.com. Your story could possibly be in one of our next episodes, just like Trish's was today. Now remember, the goal isn't certainty, the goal is clarity. Because when you start making sense of what you're experiencing, you can stop automatically blaming yourself. And sometimes the person whose comfort you've forgotten to consider is your own. So I hope that made a little more sense. And if it did, subscribe or follow the podcast so you don't miss our next conversation. And if you know someone who might hear herself in Trish's story, send this episode to her. So until next time, my fellow evolvers, keep evolving, keep glowing, and never stop showing up for yourself, because you matter. Much love.